In our Sunday night study, we have been looking at this concept of no hope, and that's certainly something that Satan wants us to believe, wants us to quit, wants us to give up, wants us to give up on our neighbors, give up on our world, give up on our country, give up even on ourselves sometimes. And just wants to say, hey, there is no hope, so there's just no business even trying. But is there always hope with God? Yes, absolutely. As we've seen already, there is always hope in God, in His power, in His providence, in His work. There is always hope. And even in this list that we've been looking at lately, where we've looked at, when you're shackled, you feel like you're shackled by sin and you're kind of enslaved to it and you're controlled by it. Is there hope? Yeah, it really doesn't matter what the sin is. There is hope. God can set us free. If we continue in His Word, then we are His disciples indeed, and we shall know the truth, and the truth shall make us what? Free. And when the Son makes you free, then you are free indeed. And we need to remember that. We can be free if we're willing to yield to Him and let Him work in our life. What about obstacles? We looked at the Israelites as they were taken out of their slavery in Egypt by God's mighty hand. There was hope for them. Even after 400 years, there was still hope. And God at the right time brought them out. And of course, they hit obstacles, things like the Red Sea. Things like giant cities in the Promised Land. And they looked at them and said, oh, there's no way we can get past those giants. No way we can get past those cities. No way we can get across the Red Sea. And what did God say? Child's play. There's always hope. There is no obstacle too big for God. And then, of course, we looked last week at those times when they had nothing. They had no water. And is that kind of important when you're out in the wilderness? There's no tap to get. And you say, well, why didn't they just drink soda? No, they didn't have that either. No refrigeration. It's not a let them eat cake situation. They had nothing to drink, no water. And that's kind of a big deal when you got 1 million people and cattle and all the rest of it. But was there hope? All they needed to do was what? Ask. And then when they ran out of food, did God know they were going to need food? Yeah, absolutely. And again, all they had to do was what? Ask. And even when they get tired of the manna, all they had to really do was what? Ask. Can we have a little flesh? Can we have a little meat? And I understand that, and God understands that, doesn't He? He understands us. And He is the good shepherd, isn't He? And He will lead us to the good pastures. He will lead us to the still waters. He will lead us to where we need to be, and He will always provide, won't He? And a lot of times we don't have because we don't ask. And we need to ask, not complain. And today what we're going to look at is those times when we feel powerless. Just feel like so overwhelmed and so weak that we almost can't even move forward. Can't even picture going forward. Can't even picture doing what God wants us to do just because we are just too powerless to do anything about it. But again, what do you think we're going to find out tonight? Is there hope? Always. So let's go back and let's look at a few examples as we have been doing. Let's go back to Exodus chapter 3. And in Exodus chapter 3, the first person we're going to look at tonight is Moses himself. Now, you know the story of Moses. There was an edict in the land of Egypt where his parents were enslaved. Many generations they had now been enslaved and working, and the Pharaoh became very jealous of the Israelites and how they had grown and got scared of them, being so many in his land. So he said, let's kill all the boys as they're born, right? And of course, we know that his parents decided, we're not going to do that. We will throw them in the river. We're going to put them in a basket, right? Kind of the letter of the law, right? So they put him in a basket, and of course we see the hand of God. Was there hope for little Moses? Yes. In fact, a great plan. The plan was to have him float down the Nile, and happened to be found by who? A servant of Pharaoh's daughter, right? Who brought him and took care of him. And who did they get to actually care for little baby Moses? His own mother. So God was all the time making preparation. There was always hope. Even though it looked bad for them, still there was hope, wasn't there? And as Moses grew up, and when he got to be about 40 years old, he decided, got kind of angry at the way his people were being treated, so he ended up killing a guy. and ended up having to run for his life and having to leave, right? Well, now we jump ahead in chapter 3 here to when he is 80 years old. Now, I don't see any 80-year-olds here, but I can imagine that about 80 you start feeling less powerful. And I have a question for you. If at this point in your life, even, again, none of us are 80, but some of us are pushing that. Some are pushing that. We know people, there may be some people watching that are pushing that or over it. But can you imagine God coming to you right now and say, I've got a job for you. I want you to take on Pharaoh, the most powerful man in the world. I want you to set the people free, and I want you to lead them across the wilderness back to this very spot where I will tell you all you need to know and then take them into the promised land. What would be your first thought? Who, me? Right. I don't have that kind of energy. I don't have that kind of ability. I cannot do that. I'm incapable. I don't have the energy. I don't have the strength. I don't have the skills. I do not have the ability to do what you want me to do, Lord. I am powerless. There is no hope for me to be able to do this. And the funny thing is, as much as the great things that Moses did, what was his response when God came to him? Bob? Couldn't do it. Who, me? There's no way we can do this at 80 years old. For the last 40 years, he's gotten comfortable, hadn't he? Just out there taking care of the sheep, got married, had a nice family. Everything was just kind of moving along nicely, wasn't it? And here comes God. In fact, let's go ahead and read it. Chapter 3, starting in verse 1. Now Moses kept the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the backside of the desert and came to the mountain of God, even to Horeb, which we later also call what? Mount Sinai. Okay? And the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush, and he looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. This is not something you see every day. So if you're Moses, what's your response? Verse 3, and Moses said, I will now turn aside and see this great sight. Why? The bush is not burnt. Seems very it always seems very formal there, doesn't it? As he's talking to himself. I will now go see what this is. But he said it. Verse 4. And when the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, God called unto him out of the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here am I. And he said, Draw not nigh hither, put off thy shoes from off thy feet, for the place whereon thou standest is holy ground. Moreover, he said, I am the God of thy father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look upon God. Did Moses know God? Yes. He knew God. He worshiped God. His father was a priest. His father-in-law was a priest. I mean, yes. He had great respect for God. He knew God. How many here know God? Have great respect for God. Believe God is powerful. Believe God is great. We believe all those things. But when push comes to shove, sometimes we will say what? But I'm still powerless, right? Verse 7, and the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people which are in Egypt, and have heard their cry by reason of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows. And I am come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians. Now at this point Moses is saying, what? Great idea. When I was there 40 years ago, it was really bad. It's still bad, isn't it? Verse 8 still, about the middle. Unto a good land, and a large, unto a land flowing with milk and honey, unto the place of the Canaanites, and the Hittites, and the Amorites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites. There were people there, weren't there? And were they just going to give them the land? But God's going to do it, right? If you're Moses, you're doing right now. Go, God. Yeah. Get him out of Egypt. Take him to that land. You got it. You do it. Verse 9. Now therefore, behold, the cry of the children of Israel is come unto me, and I have also seen the oppression wherewith the Egyptians oppress them. Come now therefore, and I will send you. Uh-oh, we just lost who? Just lost Moses. I will send you unto Pharaoh, that thou mayest bring forth my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. Again, sometimes we'll get on people in the Bible and say, well, I mean, God's asking them to. Of course I would go, right? Yeah. God calls me, I will go, right? I would do it in a heartbeat. I wouldn't be like Moses. Oh, yes, we would. How many times has God called us to do things and our first response is, I can't do that. I am incapable. I do not have the skills. I don't have the ability. I can't do that. But if God calls us, can we do it? Now, Moses had many excuses, didn't he? Verse 11. And Moses said unto God, who am I that I should go unto Pharaoh, and that I should bring forth the children of Israel out of Egypt? Who am I? I'm a shepherd who 40 years ago killed somebody who Pharaoh was going to kill, so I ran away. I'm not brave. I'm not strong. I have no skills. I'm a shepherd, which is basically what he needed, though, right? Shepherd these people across this land. God knew what he was doing. He had exactly the skill set he needed. But sometimes we don't see it, do we? And he said, who am I? Verse 12. What was the answer? And God says, certainly I will be with you, and this shall be a token unto thee that I have sent thee. When thou hast brought forth the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God upon this mountain. You want to be sure? I will bring you back here. Because we have to always remember who is in control. And who is powerful. We may be powerless, but he's powerful. And does his powerful trump our powerless? Absolutely. We are not so weak that we make him weak. He's so powerful, he makes what? Us powerful. That's the way it works, isn't it? But he had another excuse, verse 13. And Moses said, God, behold, when I come unto the children of Israel and say unto them, the God of your fathers has sent me unto you. And they shall say to me, what is his name? What shall I say unto them? I don't know what to say. I'm going to come to the people of Israel and say, we're getting out of here. They're going to say, who sent you? Right? I'm not eloquent. I can't sit there and convince these people. So what did he say? Verse 14, God said to Moses, I am that I am. And he said, thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, I am has sent me. And not only that, but he gave him many things to do, reminders that this is the God of their fathers. This is the one that had made the promise. Was that good enough? Should that have been good enough for Moses? The powerful God, the great I am, is with you and will bring you out. But it wasn't. Chapter 4. Jump down to verse 1 of chapter 4. And Moses answered and said, but behold, they will not believe me. That's a great answer, isn't it? Not that we would ever use them. You ever felt that little tap on the shoulder say, hey, go tell them about Jesus? And what's our first response? Honestly. It's a natural human response. They won't believe me. They won't listen. So what's the point? Because there's no what? There's no hope. I can't convince them. And what does God say? I know. I know you can't. But who can? And no matter what God has called us to do, he will be with us. He is able. We are incapable. He is able. Right? So he says, they won't believe me, nor hearken unto my voice. For they will say, the Lord hath not appeared unto thee. Who are you that God would appear to you? Who are you that God would use you? Why do you think you're special? And do we go tell people about Jesus? Do we serve the Lord because we think we're special? We do it because somebody special has called us for some unknown reason. Not because we're capable, but because we are incapable in some instances. That his power may win out, right? Verse 2, and the Lord said unto him, what is that in thine hand? He said, a rod. And he gave him signs. So down the rod, just becomes a snake. That's fine. Pick it up, comes a rod. Take your hand, put it in your jacket. Pull it out, leprous. Put it back in, take it out, it's good, right? Because we have to remember, God is in control. And God is powerful. Moses could not convince him on his own. He could not do it of his own power. There's no signs that Moses could do on his own to convince them with words or charisma or something like that. But God can. The Holy Spirit can. can change hearts, can change minds, right? We have to be willing to say, I can't, but God can, right? Jump down to verse 10. And Moses said to the Lord, O my Lord, I am not eloquent, neither heretofore, nor since thou hast spoken unto thy servant, but I am slow of speech and of slow tongue. Okay, that's fine. You're going with me. You'll do these signs, but still, I'm going to stumble. I'm going to say something stupid. I'm going to stumble all over it. I'm going to mess it up. And they won't listen to me because I'm slow of speech. But again, does God know us? Verse 11, the Lord said unto him, Who hath made man's mouth? Or who maketh the dumb or deaf or the seeing or the blind? Have not I the Lord? Now therefore go, and I will be with thy mouth, and teach thee what thou shalt say. No, you're not going to mess it up. Just yield to the Lord, right? He will give us the words to say in a way that makes sense, right? No matter what we need, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, whatever we think we are lacking, God can use it. Can he? Then finally, verse 13. Finally Moses said, O my Lord, send, I pray thee, by the hand of him who thou wilt send. In other words, pick somebody else. I can't. I won't. And even then, God's like, what? Oh, yes, you are. In fact, your brother Aaron is on his way. I will tell you, you tell him, and he'll tell Pharaoh. He's got a big mouth. He likes to talk. He can talk his way out of anything. Evidently, he thinks he can anyways. Didn't work too well with the whole golden calves thing. But but anyways, he likes to talk. Well, we'll utilize him. But at the end of the day, you're going, Moses. Because I'm in control. It doesn't matter how powerless we think we are. The powerful God, when he calls, can he use us? Yes, he can. And in fact, we know he did. Verse 18. Verse 18. And Moses went and returned to Jethro his father-in-law, and said unto him, Let me go, I pray thee, and return unto my brethren which are in Egypt, and see whether they yet be alive. And Jethro said to Moses, Go in peace. So he did go, didn't he? And that's what it takes. Faith enough to what? Go. Faith enough to do. Did Moses have perfect faith right now? Absolutely not. Was he still scared? Did he still feel powerless? Did he still feel incapable? Yes. But at the end of the day, he had enough faith to do what? I will go. And did God use him in mighty ways? Yeah. Did he get them out of Egypt? Again, not by Moses' great eloquence, not by his great power, but by God's great power. He used Moses and got them out and brought them back to Mount Sinai, Mount Horeb, right there where he promised, didn't he? So even though we are incapable, can God get it done? We are not powerless when God calls us, are we? In fact, let's go to the next one, Exodus chapter 17. They are now out. God has provided for them water. He's provided for them food. So even though they whine and complain, oh, let's go back to Egypt. Oh, why did you bring us out here to die? He still provided for them, didn't he? Well, here in Exodus chapter 17, we're going to start in verse 8. And this comes to a situation when we are vulnerable. How many here have weaknesses? And does the enemy know your weaknesses? And does the enemy attack your weaknesses? And that's when we feel what? Powerless, right? Can't stop him. That's my weakness. That's the chink in my armor. I can't do anything about it, right? It's my Achilles heel. I'm powerless to do anything about this. And this is what happens to them. See here in verse 8. Then came Amalek and fought with Israel in Rephidim. Now that's all they say here in Exodus, but we get more information in Deuteronomy. When Moses is recounting what happened, he gives a little more information about the fact that when they came, they attacked them from behind. They attacked the weak. They attacked the elderly. They attacked the children. In fact, over in 1 Samuel, as God is telling this to Saul, King Saul, before he's supposed to go out and wipe them out, which he doesn't do, but he's supposed to go out and wipe them out, he tells them that it's because they actually lied in wait for them. So here you get this picture of Amalek, their army, kind of watching the people of Israel, watching the army, watching the strong, watching those out front, watching all that pass by and waiting until the weak come by and then attacking them. Again, isn't that what the enemy does? All's fair in love and war, right? And they will come, and sometimes we feel powerless because we are being attacked at our weakest point. There's nothing we can do about it. But is there? This is an untrained, even the powerful ones were an untrained army. They had very little equipment. It's only what they could bring out of Egypt. And yet, could God do it? Could he protect them? Because God is more powerful than their weakness, isn't he? In fact, what happened? Verse 9. And Moses said unto Joshua, choose us out men, and go out, fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill with the rod of God in mine hand. So, Moses says to Joshua, go get some guys. Joshua will get some guys. That's faith, isn't it? Just go. And I want you, Joshua, to lead them, and I want you to fight them. And Joshua doesn't do the excuses. He doesn't say, oh, they're untrained. Oh, we don't know what to do. We've had no battle plan. We don't have the right equipment. What does Joshua say? Let's go. And what is the great battle plan? I, an 80-year-old man, I'm going to stand on a hill with the rod of God. That's the battle plan? That's the battle plan. That's always our battle plan. When our weakness is attacked, what is the battle plan, folks? Trust in God. That's the battle plan. That's the only plan. Lord, protect me. Verse 10. So Joshua did as Moses had said to him and fought with Amalek. And Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. And it came to pass when Moses held up his hand that Israel prevailed. And when he let down his hand, Amalek prevailed. So when they had the rod up, they won. And when he started going down, they would lose. And why would his arms go down? Because he's weak. He's 80 years old. And I don't know about you, how long can you hold a rod in the air over your head before your hands and arms and everything else start going to sleep? Not long. So here's a little key too. Is he powerless? He's 80. Everybody's going to understand. They're just going to lose sometimes, right? But no. Look what happens. Verse 12. But Moses' hands were heavy, and they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat thereon. First they let the guy sit down. I appreciate that. And Aaron and Hur stayed up his hands, the one on the one side and the one on the other side, and his hands were steady until the going down of the sun. Here's the beauty of it. Yes, God, put your trust in him. He will help you. You know what he'll also do? Send other people to do what? Help you. Help your weakness. That's what the church is all about, isn't it? That we encourage and edify and build up each other. And our weaknesses, as we are attacked, we are not powerless because we have God on our side and we have the church on our side. We have one another. And God provided exactly what he needed so he could keep his arms. Now, what his arms felt like that evening, I bet he had to have somebody feed him. This happened to my dad. See, I'm going to tell the story. My dad's probably going to be watching. So, my dad, he was a very strong young man. He decided to go work in the potato. They did bagging up potatoes. Potatoes are big in Bakersfield. So he drove his car there. He's like, that's a great job. And he's loading bags, 50-pound bags of potatoes all day long. And he, at the end of the day, had to call his mother and say, Mom, can you pick me up? I can't lift my arms to drive home. So sometimes it will feel that way. But will God get us through? And he will give us the help we need to get through. Won't he? So are we ever truly powerless? We may be vulnerable. We may be weak. But with God's help, are we strong? Are we protected? And will he provide the help we need? Last one. Let's go to Judges chapter 6. So they got in the land, and of course, as you know, when they got in the land, they followed God constantly, and there were no problems. Oh, I wish that were true. They did not do what they were supposed to do. You know why they didn't do what they were supposed to do? Because at times they felt powerless. Still, my favorite is Caleb. Caleb, who's same age as Joshua, or maybe a little older, was one of the spies, right? So he's up there by the time they conquer the land. And I love, Joshua comes to him and says, I will give you any part of the new land, any part of the promised land you want. Which one do you want? And Caleb says, I want the area with the giants. I don't know if he saw him when they gave him a nasty look the first time he came in, but this time he's like, I'm taking out the giants. I and my family are taking out the giants because I am powerful with who? With God. What did the rest of them say? What did the tribe of Dan say? They just looked down the place they were supposed to take and say, too hard. They went wandering around. And they didn't do what they were supposed to do. Because of that, sin remained in the land, didn't it? Temptation remained in the land. They turned themselves over to Baal and Ashtaroth and these other gods. And God was angry. So here in chapter 6, for now the umpteenth time, here in chapter 6, the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord delivered them in the hand of Midian 7 years. You say, well, that's not too bad. Well, it was a bad 7 years. And the land of Midian prevailed against Israel, and because of the Midianites, the children of Israel made them the dens which are in the mountains, and caves and strongholds. They left their cities, they left the vineyards, they left the orchards, and they went up and they lived in the mountains. And it was so when Israel had sown that the Midianites came up, and Amalekites, and the children of the east, even they came up against them, and they encamped against them, and destroyed the increase of the earth, till thou come unto Gaza, and left no sustenance for Israel, neither sheep, nor ox, nor ass. They were what? Powerless. Whenever they tried to get any food, any sheep, any oxen, they would just come in and they would take it or kill it or burn it. And this was going on for 7 years. Is that a long time? For they came up with their cattle and their tents, and they came as grasshoppers for multitude. For both they and their camels were without number, and they entered into the lands to destroy it. They just swooped in. And what was Israel to combat that? Powerless. In fact, they lost all hope. What can we possibly do about this? We'll jump down to verse 11. And there came an angel of the Lord and sat under an oak, which was in Ophrah, and that pertained unto Joash the Abiezrite. And his son Gideon threshed wheat by the winepress to hide it from the Midianites. And the angel of the Lord appeared unto him and said unto him, The Lord is with thee, thou mighty man of valor. Does Gideon feel very mighty? Does Israel feel very mighty? Is there anybody feel mighty in this land? There's nobody. They've all lost hope. And Gideon said to him in verse 13, O my Lord, if the Lord be with us, why then is all this befallen us? And where be all his miracles which our fathers told us of, saying, Did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt? But now the Lord has forsaken us and delivered us in the hand of the Midianites. There is no hope. God has forsaken us. All is lost. What are you talking about, angel? The fact that it's an angel talking to you, though, shouldn't that give you some hope? You'd think. But still, they had lost hope. In fact, verse 14. And the Lord looked upon him and said, Go in this thy might, and thou shalt save Israel from the hand of the Midianites. Have I not sent thee? Go, Gideon. You go. You go and deliver them. Now, what was Gideon doing at the time? Threshing by the winepress in the middle of the night so nobody would see him. Is this a brave man? Is this a man that's just ready to fight? No. Is this a man full of confidence and hope? No, but God says what? I have sent you, so go and do it. There is might in you because there is might in God, right? And what was his answer? Verse 15. And he said unto him, O my Lord, wherewith shall I save Israel? Behold, my family is poor in Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house. Are you kidding me? Me? Kind of like Moses, right? Who am I? I'm the weakest in my family, the lowest in my family. My family is the lowest in Manasseh, and we have no hope against these Midianites. They're like grasshoppers with the Amalekites, and powerful, and they take everything. How can we possibly do this? So the angel does give him a sign. Gideon's all about the signs. He first has them make up some cakes and things, put them on a rock, and the rock just kind of shoots up flames, cooks everything. So that was a nice sign, right? And he tells them, tell you what, we'll start with this. Just go out to the groves of Baal and knock down all the altars. Start with that. So he gets some guys together, 10 guys together, and they go out and they do what? They knock them down in the middle of the night so nobody will see them. Again, not the bravest, but they're doing it, right? They're starting out. I love what happens next. Jump down to verse 29. And they said one to another, who has done this thing? Who came and knocked down all these altars? Who did this? And when they inquired and asked, they said, Gideon the son of Joash had done this thing. Who ratted him out? That's what I want to know. Somebody snitched. Why would somebody snitch, by the way? Because they lost all hope. There's no hope against the Midianites. There's no hope against Baal. There's no hope against, right? They're too powerful. So I want to be on the winning side, right? So they snitched him out. Verse 30, then the men of the city said unto Joash, bring out thy son, that he may die. Men of what city? The Israelite city. These are Israelites, people of Manasseh, saying, let's kill the boy, lest the Midianites get mad at us, or Baal get mad at us. Because he hath cast down the altar of Baal, and because he hath cut down the grove that was by it. And Joash, I love Joash. This is one of the great statements in the Bible. Joash said unto all that stood against him, will you plead for Baal? Are you fighting for Baal now? Will you save him? Are you going to save Baal from little Gideon here? Is that what you're doing? You need to kill him to protect Baal from little Gideon over here? He that will plead for him, let him put to death, whilst it is yet morning. If he be a god, let him plead for himself, because one hath cast down his altar. If Baal is so powerful, if you're so scared of Baal, let Baal take care of Gideon. In fact, Baal, kill him by morning. And of course, does Gideon die? See, that's the one thing you have to remember. Sometimes we feel like we're powerless, when it's actually the thing we're scared of that is powerless. Why were they so scared of Baal? In fact, why were they so scared of the Midianites who put their faith in what? Baal. Doesn't matter how many they are. God is bigger than the enemy, isn't he? And their God is nothing. So, verse 33. Because of all this, or soon thereafter, they felt a rebellion growing. What did they do? Then all the Midianites and the Amalekites and the children of the east were gathered together and went over and pitched in the valley of Jezreel. But the Spirit of the Lord came upon Gideon, and he blew a trumpet, and Abiezer was gathered unto him. And he puts out a message to all the people in the area. Come, let us fight against the Midianites. Now, what was his original viewpoint? We are unable. Helpless. Not only do I not have the skills and the ability like Moses, we are powerless. We are helpless to do anything about this. Even if I wanted to. Even if Gideon felt like he was the greatest soldier to ever live, can you fight against grasshoppers? There are so many in number who are so powerful where they have no real weapons, except for a few. I mean, who can do this? We're unable. But by the sign and by just a little small test, what is Gideon now saying? Let's do it. But he does ask for a sign again. He says, if you really want me to go up against this sea of people, I do need another sign. Everybody remember what the sign was? Sign of the fleece, right? I'm going to put the fleece out, And in the morning, if it's wet and the ground around it is dry, then I'll believe you. Somewhere in the night, he figured it out. That's a bad test. If you put a sponge out in the morning and only the sponge is wet, what have you got? Science. you just have the sponge will soak up all the moisture. So it's okay, wait. Let's do that again. If I come out and the fleece is dry and everything around it is wet, then I'll go. And what does God do for him? When we feel unable, is God willing to help us? Help our unbelief. Strengthen our faith. As long as we're doing it really to come to that point where we will go. Not just delaying, not just making excuses. God will help us, won't he? In fact, God does one of the great pep talks in what he does for Gideon. See, Gideon looks out. First of all, just so you know, Gideon was told to get all these people together. Everybody remember what happened? Had a whole, like an army. It was nowhere near enough people to take out the Midianites and the Amalekites and all those people. But it was a sizable army. And God says, too many. So tell everybody they can go home if they want to. So a whole bunch of people left. God looked down and said, still too many. Here, do this. Still too many. Have them go down and drink in the water. Anybody that drinks, looking up, you keep those. How many did he have? 300. Now, how many of you would go out with 300 people against a sea of people? How many would feel powerless, unable to do this? No matter who you are. You've had the greatest soldiers in the world, the best trained, best equipped, but were they? They weren't even that. And God still says what? Do it. Now, what he does for Gideon, and I love what he does for him. He says, Gideon, I want you to sneak down into their camp. Just kind of go wheedle in there, right? And while he's sneaking around, he hears one guy say to another guy, they're just kind of chatting in their tent, said, I had a dream last night that this biscuit came rolling down the hill, or cookie, depending on how you look at it, but came rolling down the hill and just destroyed us. The other guy was like, yeah, I had the same thing. It's Gideon. Gideon's coming after. Gideon's going to destroy us. Who put that idea in their head? See, God is already preparing. We are powerless. Could Gideon, with the greatest PR program in the world, bumping microphones and everything into the camp, ever been able to change their mind like that and scare them like that? No, but God can do it. God is already preparing them. And with that, Gideon's like, let's go. Let's everybody get their pots and their torches and their swords and their horns. That's their weapons. Everybody knows what they did. They surrounded the camp, and then on the call, what did they do? They broke the pots, the lights flashed out, and they blew the horns, and everybody in camp said, Gideon is coming, Gideon's coming, he's going to destroy us all. And they started killing each other. They started running away, and he got some more people, and they chased them down. They had a great victory, didn't they? He felt unable until he realized with God, is he? He's not unable, is he? He's not powerless. God can do so many things, can he? And can even use the least of a family who is least of Manasseh to defeat an entire army of the Midianites and the Amalekites and the people from the east. In fact, that's what we have to get in our mind. Get rid of these. Right? Get rid of that nonsense and realize that with God, we are always what? Able to do whatever he calls us to do, to defeat any enemy, to accomplish any task. We are able, because if God has called us, will he give us the power to accomplish it? Doesn't matter whether we think we're incapable, whether we have the skills or not. It doesn't matter. He is able. Doesn't matter if we're vulnerable, we're weak in certain areas. God is able. And he will give us what we need to be strong. And it doesn't matter if we're unable, just powerless, helpless to do anything. He can do it, can he? Because with God, what's possible? All things are possible. And if God can frankly save our poor sinful hides, what can't he do? He can do anything, can he? So when you hear the call of God, I need you to do this. I need you to say that. I need you to go there. What do we say? Not, I can't do that. Not, I'm too weak to do that. Not, I'm completely helpless to do that. What do we say? With your help, with your power, you can use me. Let's do it. And go. By faith, trusting in Him. And is the God who created all things powerful enough to accomplish whatever He wants in our life? Yes, He is. So never think that you are powerless. Incapable, vulnerable, unable. Always know with God we are always able, right? No matter who we are, no matter what we've done, He is able to use us, isn't He? Let's pray.